My name is Daniel Wright, and on paper, I live the sort of life people might envy. At 29, I have a steady job in a London marketing firm, a tidy apartment in the city, and a partner who, to the outside world, seems like the perfect match. Ethan Collins, 31, is a sharp, driven lawyer whose confidence radiates the moment he enters a room. We've been together for almost 5 years, and by now friends and colleagues alike assume marriage is just around the corner. What they don't see, however, is how fragile that assumption feels inside my chest. Ethan works long hours, often returning home well past midnight with tired eyes and an expression pulled tight by stress. Our dinners have dwindled into hurried takeout on the sofa. Our conversations reduced to shallow exchanges about work deadlines and court cases. He still kisses me goodnight, but it feels more like a habit than a hunger. I miss the man who once laughed at my clumsy cooking attempts and pulled me close in crowded rooms simply because he couldn't resist the urge. Now, when I catch his gaze, I sometimes wonder if he still truly sees me, or if I've become another fixture of his carefully managed life. That quiet ache of being overlooked began gnawing at me in ways I couldn't ignore. So, when a free weekend appeared a rarity in Ethan's calendar, I suggested a hike, something to shake the cobwebs and remind us of the world beyond deadlines and phone calls. Ethan didn't even look up from his laptop. "You go," he said flatly. "I've got too much to catch up on." The rejection wasn't harsh, just casual, almost thoughtless, which somehow hurt worse. It was as if my presence or absence made no real difference. So I went alone. The forest I chose was only an hour's drive from the city, a sprawling woodland reserve I had read about but never visited. When I arrived, the car park was nearly empty, the kind of quiet that promised escape. The late summer sun filtered through dense canopies, and the air carried that rich, earthy scent of moss and damp leaves. I told myself this was what I needed: space to breathe, silence to think, perhaps even clarity. At first, the path was straightforward, winding gently between towering oaks and clusters of ferns. I walked with measured steps, trying to push away the lingering sting of Ethan's indifference. But my thoughts clung stubbornly, circling the same questions. Was I expecting too much? Was I selfish for wanting more attention, more warmth? Love wasn't supposed to feel this lonely, was it? Somewhere along the trail, distracted by my spiraling thoughts, I missed a marker. The path narrowed, then forked, and I chose the left instinctively. After 20 minutes, I realized I hadn't seen another hiker, nor any signs pointing back to the main loop. When I pulled my phone from my pocket, the screen displayed the mocking phrase, "No service." A knot of unease formed in my stomach. I tried retracing my steps, but each turn looked the same: endless trees, tangled undergrowth, and shadows lengthening as the sun dipped lower. My breathing quickened. Every rustle of leaves sounded louder, every snap of a twig sharpened into alarm. I wasn't helpless, not really, but I couldn't deny the creeping panic. I pressed onward, hoping for a clearing or a familiar landmark. Instead, the forest seemed to close in around me, the once soothing silence now oppressive. My thoughts shifted from Ethan to the raw immediacy of fear. What if I'm out here after dark? What if I can't find the way back? My pulse thundered in my ears, my steps growing clumsy on the uneven ground. Then, just as my panic threatened to spill over, a voice called out, "Hey, you all right there?" I froze. From between the trees, a figure emerged. A man in a khaki ranger uniform, tall and broad-shouldered, with an expression equal parts concern and calm authority. His presence was so sudden, so solid, that relief surged through me like a tide. He approached steadily, boots crunching on dry leaves, his dark green eyes fixed on me. "You look a little turned around," he said with a faint smile that carried more reassurance than words alone. I exhaled shakily, realizing just how tense I had been. "Yeah, I think I got lost." "Not the first time it's happened out here," he replied warmly. "Don't worry, you're safe now." And in that instant, standing in the fading light of the woods, heart still racing, I felt something stir inside me that I hadn't felt in years, the comfort of being seen and the disarming presence of someone who noticed, The ranger introduced himself as Ryan Carter, and something about the way he said his name, steady, unhurried, immediately put me at ease. He guided me along a narrow track with practiced certainty, moving as though the forest itself bent around his knowledge. I followed, still shaken by my disorientation, but oddly grateful for the misstep that had led me into his path. We reached a small clearing where a weathered wooden cabin stood, its porch light faintly glowing despite the early evening sun. Ryan explained it was a ranger station, modest but functional, where he spent most shifts monitoring the trails and assisting lost hikers like me. He offered me a seat on the porch bench and disappeared briefly inside, returning with a bottle of water. "Drink," he urged kindly. "You've had a bit of a scare." I obeyed, the cool liquid cutting through the dryness in my throat. His attentiveness unsettled me in ways I didn't fully understand. Ethan, my partner, would have waved off my panic with a brisk comment about being more careful next time. Ryan, by contrast, spoke as if my fear mattered, as if I mattered. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, listening to the chorus of crickets waking in the underbrush. Ryan asked about me, not in the polite, half-distracted manner I was accustomed to, but with genuine curiosity. I told him my name, my city job, and how I had decided to spend the weekend exploring alone. When I mentioned Ethan, I described him as ambitious, always busy, careful to keep my tone neutral. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "That kind of drive is admirable," he said, "but sometimes the people closest to us get lost in the shuffle." His words struck deeper than I expected. For a second, I wanted to protest, to defend Ethan, but the truth was undeniable. I had been lost, not only in the forest, but in my own relationship. I shifted the conversation toward him. Ryan spoke about his life with an openness that disarmed me. He had grown up near these woods, joined the ranger service in his 20s, and never left. His last relationship, he admitted with a shrug, had ended because his partner wanted city lights while he craved the hush of trees. There was no bitterness in his voice, only a calm acceptance of who he was and what he needed. That acceptance radiated like warmth, and I found myself drawn to it. As dusk deepened, the cabin lantern cast a golden glow over his features. I caught myself staring at the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes softened when he smiled. Guilt pricked at me, sharp and insistent. I had no business noticing these details, yet I couldn't look away. Ryan must have sensed the shift, because his expression grew more careful, more watchful. He didn't move closer, didn't press, but his presence filled the space between us with a tension I could almost taste. "Can I tell you something?" I asked, surprising even myself. "Of course," he replied. The words tumbled out. I confessed that lately I felt invisible, that Ethan's world seemed too crowded for me to fit inside. My voice faltered, but Ryan didn't interrupt. He listened, truly listened, the way no one had in years. When I finally trailed off, he spoke softly. "Everyone deserves to feel wanted, Daniel. Everyone." The sentence lingered in the night air, heavy and undeniable. I looked at him, then really looked, and the silence between us became charged. His hand rested near mine on the bench, and when his fingers brushed lightly against my skin, my pulse leapt. I should have pulled away. I should have remembered the years Ethan and I had shared, the promises implied, if not spoken. Instead, I leaned into the spark, helpless against it. Ryan's gaze held mine, questioning but unafraid. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned forward. The world seemed to still, the cricket's song fading, the forest itself holding its breath. Our lips met in a tentative, lingering kiss, gentle at first, then deepening with the hunger of two men who had been waiting for something they could no longer deny. When we finally broke apart, the guilt came rushing in like cold water. I pressed my palms against my face, breathing hard, ashamed, yet exhilarated. Ryan didn't crowd me, didn't demand more. He simply sat there, his presence steady, his eyes calm. "You're safe," he said again, though this time I knew he meant more than the woods. And though I was reeling, though part of me screamed that I had crossed an unforgivable line, another part of me felt startlingly alive. I woke to the faint scent of coffee, and the soft scrape of movement in the small cabin. For a disoriented moment, I thought I was back home, that Ethan was in the kitchen preparing for another long day. But when I opened my eyes, I saw Ryan Carter moving easily through the cramped space, his ranger uniform freshly pressed, his demeanor unshaken. The memory of the night before surged through me, the confession, the touch, the kiss that had burned through the fog of loneliness. My chest tightened, torn between shame and longing. I shifted on the worn cot, the thin blanket slipping from my shoulders. "Morning," Ryan said without turning, pouring steaming coffee into a mug. His voice was steady, neither casual nor heavy with expectation. He set the cup on a small table beside me. "It's stronger than it looks, trust me." I managed a faint smile, though my throat felt tight. "Thanks." He sat across from me, his expression calm but his eyes searching mine. Silence stretched until I forced myself to speak. "About last night." Ryan nodded slowly, saving me from the weight of explanation. "I know you have someone waiting for you. I don't want you thinking I've forgotten that." The honesty in his words was a relief, though it didn't lessen the turmoil inside me. "I didn't plan it. I admitted. I don't even know why I let it happen." Ryan leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped. "Maybe because you needed to feel wanted. Maybe because you've been carrying something heavy, and for once you let yourself set it down." His insight cut too close to the truth. I lowered my gaze, ashamed of how easily he had seen me. And yet, despite the guilt coiling in my chest, I couldn't deny the flicker of gratitude. For one night, someone had truly noticed me. When the coffee cooled and the sun rose higher, Ryan stood and shouldered his pack. "I'll take you back to the main trail. From there, it's a straight walk to the car park." The return journey felt heavier than the night before. Each step carried me further from the warmth of his presence, closer to the life I had built with Ethan. My phone buzzed in my pocket, signal restored. A message from Ethan lit the screen. "Busy day. We'll be home late. Don't wait up." The words stung in their simplicity, as though nothing had changed, as though I hadn't crossed a line that now separated me from who I was yesterday. At the edge of the forest, where gravel replaced soil, and the car park shimmered in the daylight, I hesitated. Ryan stopped beside me, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Daniel," he said quietly, "sometimes the forest shows us what we're missing, not just where we've been lost." I turned to him, searching for something to hold on to, an answer, a promise, maybe even an escape. But Ryan offered none of those. What he gave instead was honesty, and in that honesty, a mirror of my own unrest. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now," I confessed. He gave a faint smile, tinged with sadness. "You'll figure it out. Just don't lie to yourself about what you need." We stood there, suspended in a silence that said more than words ever could. Finally, I forced myself to move, to walk toward my car. The crunch of gravel underfoot echoed, like finality. When I glanced back, Ryan was still there, steady, unflinching, a part of the forest itself. The drive home blurred into a haze of shifting thoughts. I replayed the kiss, Ethan's text, Ryan's words, over and over until the city swallowed the wilderness behind me. By the time I reached our apartment, the familiar walls felt different, smaller, colder, as though they no longer belonged to me. Ethan wasn't home, of course. His suit jacket hung neatly on the chair, his laptop open on the dining table. Evidence of his presence, but not his touch. I sat alone in the quiet, the weight of choice pressing down on me. What had happened in the woods was more than a mistake. It was a revelation. I had been starving for affection, for recognition, and when it appeared, I hadn't resisted. Now the question lingered like smoke. Was this the beginning of an ending or the start of a truth I could no longer bury? The apartment felt hollow when I stepped inside, as though its walls held more silence than air. I dropped my keys into the bowl near the door and stood for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the muted sounds of traffic outside. It should have felt familiar, comforting even, but instead it felt like a space belonging to someone else. Ethan Collins wasn't home, though that hardly surprised me. His laptop glowed on the dining table, a stack of legal documents spread beside it. His absence was expected, But tonight, it carried a different weight. After what had happened in the woods, I could no longer pretend his distance was harmless. I paced the living room, my body restless though my mind was heavy. The memory of Ryan Carter's kiss lingered, not only on my lips but deep in my chest, stirring questions I wasn't ready to face. It hadn't just been a lapse in judgment, it had been a glimpse into what I was missing. And now, standing in this apartment surrounded by Ethan's orderliness, I felt the contrast more sharply than ever. When Ethan finally returned past midnight, he moved with his usual practiced efficiency, coat on the hanger, shoes aligned, briefcase set by the desk. He kissed me on the forehead, murmured a weary, "Hey," and headed straight to the shower. I stood frozen, the words I wanted to say caught in my throat. I needed you today. I needed you every day, and you weren't here. Instead, I asked the only safe question, "How was work?" "Long," he replied curtly from the bathroom. Water thundered in the pipes, drowning out anything else. I sank into the sofa, the distance between us stretching wider by the minute. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, and for a fleeting second, I hoped it was Ryan. But of course, it wasn't just a promotional email, meaningless and disposable. The following morning, I dressed for work, my reflection in the mirror betraying exhaustion I couldn't disguise. Ethan barely looked up from his laptop as he sipped coffee. I forced a smile, masking the storm inside me. On the train ride to the office, my thoughts circled endlessly. Ryan's words echoed, "Don't lie to yourself about what you need." That truth gnawed at me, no matter how hard I tried to shove it aside. At work, meetings blurred into one another. Colleagues laughed in the break room, their voices muffled, distant. I felt detached, as if I were watching life through glass. When my phone buzzed again at lunch, my pulse quickened before I even checked. This time, it was a message from an unknown number. "Glad you made it home safe. Ryan." I read the words 3 times, my chest tightening. It wasn't flirtatious, not overtly, but it carried something deeper: concern, sincerity, presence. Exactly the qualities I had been starving for. I typed a quick thank you, hesitated, then added, "It meant a lot what you did." I deleted the second sentence before hitting send. Even the half-truth felt dangerous. That evening, Ethan suggested we attend a networking dinner together, his voice clipped, more obligation than invitation. I agreed automatically, though my stomach twisted. At the event, he worked the room effortlessly, shaking hands, exchanging business cards, laughing at jokes he didn't find funny. I stood beside him, invisible, a prop for his polished image. At one point, his hand brushed my shoulder, a gesture for the crowd, not for me. I forced myself to smile, but inside, something fractured further. I excused myself early, muttering about a headache, and left alone. Back in the apartment, I sat in the dark, phone in hand, staring at Ryan's simple message. A single line, yet it had followed me all day. I wanted to reply, to bridge the silence, but fear held me back. Was it already too late to draw a boundary? Or had the boundary dissolved the moment our lips touched in the forest? As I set the phone down, a realization settled heavy in my chest. I could no longer deny what I'd felt with Ryan, nor could I ignore how empty things had become with Ethan. The choice wasn't clear, but the need for one was undeniable. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, caught between 2 lives, one built on loyalty, the other ignited by longing. And for the first time, I admitted to myself that whatever came next, nothing would remain the same.